Evangelism is declarative. God, in a sense, was the very first evangelist. He was the proclaimer. And there are two ways that he proclaimed. Firstly, the psalmist says, the heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim his righteousness. Day after day, they pour forth speech. And so as we look at natural revelation, we see that in creation itself, God is already declaring the innate greatness and goodness that is found in him alone. And then, of course, through his word, through special revelation, through Jesus Christ, God declares Jesus the Son of God. And so the gospel that we proclaim is with words in a fluent way that helps people to understand the essence of what we are actually all about as people of God. And so the gospel is not only lived out, but it has to be proclaimed. It has to be articulated with actual words.
Of course, in the Old Testament, we see that the reason that we have good news is because there's bad news. And we are surrounded by bad news. The bad news is that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. And we see that in Genesis chapter 3, where Adam and Eve, they fall short of the glory of God. They engage in sinful acts of disobedience. But what does God do? God, in the moment, promises the redemption by saying, the seed of the woman will crush the head of the serpent. So while there is an invasion of sin and an invasion of Satan on earth, God promises that he's going to bring about redemption.
When I think about the history of proclamation evangelism and what that really looked like in the Old Testament, I think of it in two different ways. In one space, you really see the Old Testament writers by, the work of the Spirit really laying the foundation that greater news was coming, good news was coming, that it would be fulfilled in the Messiah. But I also see the prophetic voice, of people who were called, that were calling the people of God into repentance and really sharing the heart of God. Every time you see God calling someone into repentance in the Old Testament, it was very much like, this is out of my will. This is not what I want for you. This is not my best for you, because my heart is this towards you. My heart is restoration. My heart is wanting to be reconciled with you. And in the middle of that, greater news is coming. Something's coming.
In the Old Testament, Noah, his mission was to proclaim, hey, there's going to be a deluge, but come into the ark that I built, there is a salvation in this. But when he was proclaiming the message, there was not even, let alone a deluge, there was not even a little trickling rain at all. But people laughed at him, but he faithfully proclaimed the message and he believed in his own message.
Look at Isaiah, and once he's touched, God says, who shall I send? And he says, here am I, Lord. He is known as the Old Testament evangelist, the way he talks, Come, let us reason together, Isaiah 1:18. Though your sins be many. I mean, what is the message the evangelist preaches? You could pull right out of Isaiah's page, And I think we all can see in the Old Testament, God used prophets like Elijah right up on the mountain. Hey, let me show you my God. Which God is true? I mean, you stand in places like India and other countries where there's plethora of gods, and they're oftentimes, without decrying or putting down their gods, we tell them, you have served other gods, you've been to temples, you've been everywhere, and have you found peace? Have you found hope? And let me tell you about Jesus. And then you proclaim Jesus like the prophet Elijah or Elisha.
In the New Testament, we see it starting with John the Baptist. I call him the ultimate herald. Proclamation, the verb is keruso, the noun is kerux, the herald. The ultimate herald was John the Baptist, heralding, like in Isaiah 40, telling, I will be the man who prepares the way, announcing to the world. It's a prophecy of Isaiah fulfilled through John the Baptist.
Just like the Samaritan woman, I think Jesus just focused on her. It says he had to go to Samaria. And I mean, for Jesus to do that, to spend time with the woman by the well and spend considerable time with her, and then she was the kind of point person to get the whole village. It wasn't the disciples. It wasn't Jesus himself. They didn't do proclamation out there, like I used to do at one point. Go into town, sing a song, attract attention, get the whole village, and then in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, share the gospel and then go to the next village. But I think just the way Jesus did it, spend time with that one person, God divinely orchestrates, and they can be the key individuals to actually bring the whole community.
When I think about proclamation in both little and big ways, or little and big audiences, individuals or groups, I really am encouraged by the witness and the testimony of Paul. And so I was reflecting, in Acts 10 or Acts 26, we get this big moment where Paul's in front of Festus and Agrippa and Bernice, and he's able to share like his own faith journey and what God did for him and his experience and how he was transformed. But then he reminds us back in Romans 10 that it's, that people we want them to call on something that they believe, but they can't believe unless somebody is sent, and so we have to be sent. And so I think there's a space in there where Paul is reminding us that there are these stages that we may have where we may be able to speak in front of groups of people, and God sets the stage for us to be able to boldly proclaim straightforwardly our own experience. But there's also a place where we put on the daily shoes of how we're sent out. And so, as I'm lacing my shoes, zipping up my boots in the morning, I also have to think about where are all the places that God is sending me in this immediate moment.
The greatest New Testament example of the evangelist is Philip. And to see his study, where in Acts chapter 6, we see him where he's identified as one of the deacons, but he's full of grace and wisdom and character. He has a compassion to care for the poor and a heart for the poor. He's serving as a deacon to care for the neglected widows. But then you find him in chapter 8, and there he is off meeting with the Ethiopian eunuch, and the Lord brings him together on the road, and he's proclaiming the gospel to this Ethiopian. But then he goes house to house, and he's preaching as well, and then he ends up, in Caesarea, and he spends 20 years maybe of his life in a house, and we hear about him in Acts chapter 21, and he's Philip the evangelist, and there he has probably been key in his church, his house church there, and you see his daughters prophesy. So he's even raising up the next generation. I think some of those components are a great example for a 21st century evangelist.
Because if you consider like the Acts 2 model, Acts 2:42, we talk about the early church, it was still largely a relational network of people that did life on a day-to-day basis in a very communal way. And that brings what, a lot of sociologists call like thick relationships. The gospel travels best through thick relationships and not thin relationships. And so I think that's important in urban, rural environments, and probably increasingly digital environments as well. The gospel transfers and travels best through thick relationships and not just thin relationships.
In the New Testament, you would understand proclamation in that sense. It's not something that happens always in the confines of a local church, particularly, or within a structure of a Christian meeting, but it's something that happens in a missional context, in the marketplace, outside of the gathering of the saints. And that's something that is always invitational, declaring the goodness of God to a culture that is so, averse to who God is.
In a sense, we don't get to choose the time that we live or the context in which we minister, but we are called to be faithful in proclaiming the gospel in the context that we're in. And it strikes me when you read through the prayer requests of the New Testament, actually many of the prayer requests in regards to evangelism and proclamation are not so much about other people becoming Christians, but about the need for Christians to be clear and to be bold and to be courageous in proclaiming the gospel.